Why is everyone talking about this case? Well, let's talk about it.
Corsair's new 32-inch Xeneon 1440p gaming monitor has the features you need to play your best. Features like silky smooth 165Hz refresh rate IPS display with 1 millisecond MPRT response time, quantum dot technology, HDR 400, and built-in mount for either a microphone, webcam, or even a DSLR. To see the complete list of features of the Corsair Xeneon 32-inch gaming monitor, follow the link in the description below.
So this is the Y60 by Hyte. Hyte is actually a brand that's a part of, well, iBuyPower. iBuyPower is an SI here in the United States. We're not gonna talk about iBuyPower. We're gonna talk about the fact that they are an SI that's been around for a long time that has had a lot of unique case designs that you can only buy through getting one of their pre-builts. This is the first time in a long time that I've seen a case become available that has been apparently designed and now being distributed by an SI. I don't normally do these sitting down, but my workbench is being utilized by a 3D printer right now because I'm trying to learn how to 3D print, okay? So anyway, we're using our alternate set over here. Now the Y60 has a pretty unique design to it where Phil and I were talking about it, it's almost like if the fractal torrent, there's so much static.
I heard it through the mic, that's scary. But
I'm not even touching it.
I feel like I'm gonna get zapped somehow.
Ah!
That was so loud.
I felt that up to my elbow.
It was so loud.
Okay, I think it's discharged. It's almost like if the fractal torrent and the dynamic 011 or the 011 dynamic had a baby. But it's tons of airflow. The entire back of the chassis, and as you'll see in a second here, is nothing but ventilation. This could potentially be a new standard in cooling. But it's a very unique design, as you can see. It's got a wraparound, and this is glass, by the way. It's got this wraparound glass in the front that makes, well, they doubled down on the whole. Let's use the motherboard tray wall thing for cooling. It is a dual chamber case, and they give you some fold out. I don't understand why companies do this. Maybe it's just cheaper. They give you some fold out instructions on how to install your power supply, where to put your radiators. It does support top mounted and, I believe, back mounted radiators. We'll call them back mounted. It is multi-glass paneled, so it's not a curved piece of glass. Because you imagine how much it would cost to make a curved piece of glass that fits the front of this like that? So here's a side panel right there that comes off with a single screw. Now, in terms of motherboard support, it supports mini ITX, micro ATX, ATX, and eATX. It also comes pre-installed with a a PCI Express riser cable. It does also support 3-slot for the vertical mount, as you can see right here. So it's gonna push a 3-slot card though, pretty close to the glass. You need to keep that in mind. But look at the bottom down here. It's all ventilated, and there are fans down inside there pulling air from the bottom of the chassis up towards the top. So we can have fans in the bottom, we can have fans on the back wall, and we can have fans up here on top, as you can see. And then if we look at the back side, in terms of ventilation, we heard you like vents, so we made an entire panel that's nothing but a vent. Pop that off. So look at that. Probably the biggest air filter I have ever seen in terms of dust and whatnot. So here's what the rear looks like. Your power supply gets mounted right here. Here is a drive cage. It has your hardware and stuff in there. Does give you access to the backside of the motherboard right here. So if you need to get in there to change, say, an AIO pump, if you were gonna change your cooler from air cooler, repaste or whatever, you can get to the bracket holding it off from the backside. Front side connectors right here. You do have a fan connectors, obviously, because there's fans pre-installed in the bottom. There's no fans pre-installed in the top. There is one in the rear. So then we also have a USB 3.0, an HD audio, a front panel connector that's solid. Do you have any idea how excited I am about this? The front panel connector layout has been standard, at least not necessarily on ITX motherboards. Some are different than others still. They've been standard on MATX and up for I don't know how long. So there's no reason why you can't make it a single plug like this. It doesn't have ketchup and mustard cables, and then you have to fight with polarities and stuff. Just plug this in and it's good to go. And then you have a USB-C front side panel connector right there. So this is all pre-routed down through the bottom right there. And check this out, we have 45-degree angle grommets right here that are more than just a grommet, they're actually more of like a rubber flap. So you know how you'll put cables through a grommet and they're like this? You put one cable through and then they're like, and it's all open and ugly looking because one cable went through. You route these up and around from the back side like that, and the grommet stays put. So that when you look at it from the front side, you don't have the grommet being all ugly, it just stays nice and solid. So it's a small thing that most people would never think about as being any sort of a problem. It's a nice solution to a nitpick that I think I and a lot of people have had for a long time. You can see right here on the back, it does support 140 and 120 millimeter fans, 2 of them. So you could do either a 240 or potentially a 280 AIO right here if you so desired. Big channel right here to be able to run your cables out if you're gonna change out fans on the bottom. So the top panel is just held on by friction nubs. So you just pop that up. Again, biggest air filter ever. And then you get access to your radiator tray in here. The thickness is designed to where you can run the fans on the top side here, and it kind of goes in this recessed cubby. And then your AIO part can actually hang down the bottom or vice versa, depending on the size of the AIO you got. And you can fit 120 and 140 millimeter fans up here on the top. So here is that bracket, making it a lot easier to install. So you can get your fans here, your AIO there, lower it down through the chassis, and then it's a whole lot easier to work on it outside of the case than it is inside. So now that I've got that bracket out of there, you can see just how much room you have for wiring cables and such. PCIe cables can come through here if you wanted them to, EPS Express power can come through here, or they can come through the major grommets right here. There is technically, even though there's fans right here, enough of a gap right here to where you could bring PCI Express cables out here up to your GPU. Although there are pre-installed fans in the bottom, so you're gonna wanna keep that in mind so that you don't accidentally get anything caught in your blades. So there are the bottom fans, 2 120 millimeter fans pre-installed. But this gives you access to lower compartment cable management. This is something that I'm seeing a lot more brands do now, where instead of just trying to have everything crammed in the backside, where although once you have the power supply here, you still have a pretty decent amount of space right here, these grommets going underneath and this compartment right here allow you to hide a lot of stuff in this area. So if you had like a Commander Pro or some other fan commander unit control box or whatever, you could actually hide that down here in the basement if you wanted and not have to run it up here as long as your cables are long enough. So there are screws right here on the side that are holding in the side glass. I want to remove this glass real quick. There's not really a reason that I could think of why you would need to remove the front glass. But so far the build quality of it is very sturdy, even without any side panels on it. There we go. So right now, even without any side panels on it, there's not really like too much flex. You start to break down chassis, and often you'll find that they start to become really wobbly until everything is put back on the outside. That's not the case here. That's a pun, I know, but that's about all of the jiggling I can get. One thing to keep in mind though, these outer screws right here, this is for standard ATX. If you were to put an eATX motherboard on here, it will more than likely extend out beyond these grommets. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. Now in terms of front panel connectivity, or I should say edge panel, because this is at the 45, okay, whatever. USB-C, USB-A, USB-A, a combo plug for head jack or headphone jacks. So keep that in mind. If you've got a headphone that has a split mic and audio jack, then you'll need an adapter to bring those back to a single jack to work in here, which might even be in here. Let me see, I'm curious now. We were talking about the amount of detail that Hyte has put into this case because of the fact that everything is vertically or horizontal, no, I guess, what would you call that? Centered on its own axis. So if you draw a line through the center of all these plugs, everything lines up, even though they're all different heights. So little things like that were obviously thought about. But my question now is going to be, have they thought about people that maybe don't have, okay, so that's kind of neat. This is like a sled that just slides out. Have they thought about people that maybe are using headphones that don't have a combo jack? This sled is the most industrial sounding sled. It sounds like forging. And there it is. There's the combo jack. So what I just said to keep in mind, if you don't have it, they provide it. So also in here is just some additional screws for mounting SSDs and drives to the drive cage, and then some USBs. So let's talk about storage real quick. There's actually not a lot of places in here to mount storage. So you've got these two drives, which will work for the 3.5-inch drive and a 2.5-inch drive. SATA obviously would, or SATA's SSDs would fit in these 4 holes right here. And you get 2 of these sleds. Looking in the backside here, there's nowhere else to mount either a spinning drive or a SATA SSD type of drive. So I think what Hyte is kind of counting on here is the fact that so many people have moved on to M.2 that they would only need 2 places to mount a drive like that here. Now the nice thing about 2.5-inch SSDs is the fact that you can mount them anywhere you want with a little bit of double-sided tape. So you can even make a sandwich of them on here if you wanted. But there's only 2 official mounting locations here for 2.5-inch SSDs, and I don't see any. I thought maybe there'd be some holes on here. You can mount them along the bottom, but nope. This is so thick. One thing I think that's really interesting that I should point out though, expansion is going to be interesting because they automatically want you to use the vertical riser here. The expansion slots, if you've noticed, are low profile. If you were going to use any other expansions in here, whether it be capture card, sound card, whatever, you can still use it, but it has to be low profile. The sad part about that is there's not a lot of low profile peripherals, for expansion slots these days. Typically you'd find those in like server grade, because server grade usually with the 2U chassis or blade chassis is going to be low profile. 4U that you can use full height. But this is something to keep in mind right here. So if you're going to be running your graphics card over here, which you kind of have to, you're clearly stuck with having to use low profile expansion cards. That's about the biggest drawback I can find to this chassis. I've said before, it's difficult to reinvent the rectangle, but every now and then you get a company like Hyte here that will just slice a 45 into the quarter of that rectangle, but then completely blow you away in other aspects, like hiding the fans underneath this giant grill on the bottom. The entire rear panel being nothing but ventilation. Huge ventilation on the top, all this ventilation on the back. I also really enjoy and like the fact that the grill style is just this asymmetric looking 45-degree angled, ventilation. It's not like, your hexagons or circles or, your what we call the Star Wars pattern, which is all the verticals, but they're all offset, so then you have what looks like the Imperial wall. It's just different. And that's what I love about it. You can fit 360 millimeter AIO or radiator on the top. If you want to do custom loop, you can fit one on the side panel, and you can more than likely figure out a way to get one down the bottom if you're creative. You can fit a 120 in the back right here if you wanted to, a 120 radiator. So you could fit a lot of radiators in this if you wanted to be creative with it. I would love to see when we do our next, Jay, what do you think, to see some builds with this. I know there's gotta be somebody out there following me who's recently done a build in this. This chassis just came out within the last few months, and so I think there's someone out there that's done a build in this. If you have, sound off and let me know what you guys think about it. In terms of cooler height for the CPU, you have 160 millimeters of vertical height, which technically is horizontal on the plane that it's facing, but it's vertical with the perpendicular mounting. You get what I'm trying to say. 160 millimeters of clearance before you hit the sidewall right here. So you could fit a pretty decent cooling tower in this if you weren't going to do water cooling. But I feel like this is the kind of chassis that would thrive in both environments. Put a big dual tower cooler on here, like a big Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro or something, or a Noctua. Or put a big 360 AIO in here and have all the other fans cranking, and you would have a ton of cool air making its way inside of this chassis because it literally could pull air from anywhere it wants. And considering the fact that every single opening in this chassis has a fan filter on it, dust shouldn't be something that accumulates in here too badly as long as you stay on top of it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Sound off down below what you guys think about our first look of the Hyte Y60. Is this a case that you guys would consider? 100% transparency here. I was skeptical. I was skeptical when I heard that it was an affiliation with iBuyPower. I was skeptical about it being a brand I'd never really heard of. And then when I saw photos of it, I thought they added a 45 degree to it and didn't really do anything super unique on the first photos that I saw. But then once we started looking at it, obviously there is a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of design, and this is not cheap tooling. I can promise you right now, this tooling is expensive. So it is going to be, in my opinion, worth doing a build. It's so, look at this, it is so solid. All right, guys, sound off down below. Would you build in this case? If you would, and you could, what would you put in it? Thanks for watching, guys. Links are down below so you guys can check out Hyte and see what all they have to offer. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.